All right, welcome back. We are still out here with the weird clocks, but we're going to go ahead and do our part two of module three. Go ahead and share my screen and we'll get started. All right. So we left off on emphasis. That was our next principle of design. Um, and honestly, emphasis is similar to contrast in a way, or you can create emphasis by using contrast. And I'll explain how that kind of goes along. So the definition is creating a clear focal point that grabs the viewer's attention. And techniques to do that are by using bright colors, strategic placement, sharp details, or a larger size. Um, that's how you create the emphasis. So a tip, keep the emphasis simple. Don't overload your piece with too much. Then the emphasis kind of gets lost if there's too much emphasis. And how can you apply that? You can use a bright orange object against a bluish neutral background that draws immediate focus to it, to the bright orange thing. So with that said, what is emphasized in Monet's Impression Sunrise, or where does the focal point seem to be at in the sunrise painting? I'll let you answer that, and then I'll give you the answer. Okay, so our answer is the sun that we have here, and I also kind of gave you that answer by this example here. But Monet does a great job of creating emphasis in his paintings, which makes sense because he is an impressionist painter, which is all about trying to create the impression of something, not necessarily photorealism. So with his piece here, he's not the Andy Warhol piece we saw before. He uses really saturated colors of green and red, so that creates good contrast, but it sort of is like the emphasis is everywhere. However, here, Monet only uses bright, saturated colors in the sun. The rest of the painting seems to be like more neutral, more muted blue tones, and they're not in as much detail. But really, the orange is what captures our eye and where like the eye just naturally wants to go as the focal point. The blues, the neutral blues, kind of push back a bit more. So there's two things working: the neutral aspect, or like the softer like hues that we see, or tints of the hue that we see. And then also just the color itself is going to contrast with the orange. And then the orange is more vibrant, more saturated, more close to a pure hue, which is going to seem like it's closer, seem like it's more focused in. All right. Movement. Oh, we've been here before, I think. Movement is our next principle. Our definition for movement is guiding the viewer's eyes across the artwork, like following a story. And that can create some really good visual interest. So tools to do that are flowing lines, dynamic shapes, repetition, and directional elements. There's lots of ways that you can create movement within an artwork. It's kind of less like defined as the other ones we talked about. So a tip, think about how the eye travels through the artwork. How does it not get stuck too much on one place? How do you keep visual interest going? And so how could you apply this? How could you create it? Curved lines and a composition can mimic the flow of water, directing the viewer's gaze. So that's going to create a sense of motion by using those curved lines that sort of replicate the water. All righty. So how is movement implied in Starry Night? Answer that, and then I will give the answer. All right. So line is going to be what creates this sense of movement and texture as well in Starry Night. So Van Gogh is really careful not to like smooth out any of his lines. You can see each little brushstroke line within his artworks, within this one and within others. And he does an excellent job capturing something that is hard to capture, which is wind. When you look at wind, you can feel it, but you can't see it unless there's like, trees around it moving or something like that. And so he creates this big swirling shape here to give the impression or to imply that there is motion. And he does that through line and through texture within his work by using all these little short brush strokes. And that really kind of guides us around the artwork and helps us to understand, the feeling of this painting, which again, which Van Gogh is an impressionist artist, wants us to feel like we are, experiencing this, like we can feel the wind, we can, see how the light is working. It's not always about photorealism. It's about making you feel like you're present in these landscapes. So I think he does an excellent job of that. All right, our last one we're going to talk about in this part is rhythm and repetition. And this is one where it's like they are similar, but they are also very different. And they actually sort of use each other to create the other. So the definition is repeating elements to create rhythm, textures, or structures. Think about it this way. This helps me a lot. The rhythm of something is like the bridge of a song, whereas the repetition is the chorus that repeats itself. So you need both of those things to have a good song. If you just have the repetition and it's just the repeating over and over and over again, the song can seem, kind of boring. But if you have that bridge that changes up the repetition of it, that creates some interest and, helps the song be more just a better song. So think about it that way. Rhythm is what changes, and then repetition is what stays the same. So an example, mosaic tiles, fabric patterns, or repeating motifs in abstract art. Fabric and like textiles is a great way to identify it because like in, let's think about like crochet or knitting. If you're crocheting, you're doing, the same kind of stitch over and over and over again, and that repeats itself. But you can change color, you can change like the width of like when you change the color, you can add designs in. You can do all these things to create rhythm and break up that repetition of just like the stitch over and over again. You can also add variety with the repetition, within the repetition to keep it visually interesting, and that's where your rhythm comes in. So how do you apply the ingredients or the elements? Alternating colors and shapes in a pattern keep the design dynamic and engaging. So just like I said there, like if you're knitting something, changing the color, changing the shape of it, or like if you want to add like, things into it, that's going to break up the rhythm of like that same pattern over and over and over again. With that said, in Andy Warhol's soup cans, what is the rhythm and what is the repetition? So you might have to look closely for this one, especially for the rhythm part. But basically, I'm just asking what is different and what stays the same in the paintings. So take a moment, answer that, and then I'll give you the answer. Alrighty. So our answers are the repetition is pretty, you can understand what that is. The soup can, the size of the painting, it repeats itself over and over again. The frames are the same. We're in this like grid-like thing that we've got here. But the rhythm and what changes is the type of soup that this is. So this is important for the meaning of his work as well. Every Campbell's soup, the year that this was painted, or these were created, are included in this grid. And Andy Warhol, just anecdotal, ate Campbell's soup every single day for lunch. He thought that, keeping that type of repetition, not having to think about what you were going to have for lunch, just knowing every single day, helped him to be more productive and to, be able to work longer without having to think about meals in between. So he just already knew every day what he was going to have for lunch. It was already set in stone. So that is why he includes all of these here and why he's sure to change every single label to being a different soup that emphasizes that idea. All right. So we are going to come back with unity and harmony in part 3, which should be our last part here. So I will see you then.